Hi everybody, and welcome to Tourism Northern Ireland's TED series of digital webinars. I'm Billy, and my business partner Damien and I from Speed Motion are going to walk you through some ways to use your mobile phone to take better photos for your business.
Hey everyone, I'm Damien. We're all going through tough times at the minute with the current pandemic, but with things starting up again, it's so important to advertise that you're open for business. And the best way to do that is by using photos and videos to promote your business online. First off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do at Speed Motion. We're a full-service content production house specialising in online video, photography and social media content. We're based in Belfast and we've been very lucky to travel all over the world filming and taking photographs for our clients. We're really passionate about the creation of high-end digital cinematography, photography, animation and creating captive content for commercial, web and TV outlets. And we've been working in the industry for over 12 years now. We've worked with brands like the BBC, Red Bull, ITV, National Trust, Tourism Northern Ireland, Tourism Ireland and the Royal Caribbean. On top of creating production segments, TV adverts and shows for a number of TV networks, we've also produced a TV documentary series called Self-Made that is currently airing in 450 million households around the world. In this webinar, we're going to take you through a few tips and techniques to bring your phone photography to the next level. First off, camera phone settings. How to set up your phone to make sure you get the most out of your photographs. A number of shooting tips and techniques to think about when you're taking your photographs. Ways to edit your photographs to really make them stand out online and make them look more professional. We'll cover a few bits of gear that we recommend to really take your photographs to the next level without breaking the bank. And lastly, editing apps. There's so many photo editing apps out there, and we're going to show you a few that we like to use.
So why is photography so important for your business? Well, you've probably heard the adage, a photo is worth 1,000 words, and that's never been more true than it is today. Photography can do so much more than just highlight new products. It can actually help you build a die-hard base of followers and customers that will support your brand and provide you with even more content to share. These days, customers love to see things for themselves before making a decision about a purchase. This means the more images and content you create, the more the likelihood of a sale. In fact, images can get you found on the web. A properly optimized image with the right alt text and everything when you post it will actually serve as another way for customers to find you online. They can also engage customers and keep them on your site for longer or encourage them to choose you over your competitors. In fact, good content is 40% more likely to get shared on social media channels, and that's what you want. It's free advertising. Wouldn't you buy something if it came from a happy customer rather than the company trying to tell you about a product? I know myself, I don't like to buy anything until I've read the reviews. So that's a perfect example of seeing something on social media and then you see, oh wow, all these people love what's being done. That's another way to use photos for your benefit. So think of all your channels, and when you create a set of images, they should be versatile and fit across all your channels, not just on the website. So during all this madness of COVID-19 and all the businesses that are closed and people not going into shops and whatever's happening with your specific business, this is the perfect time to gain a little bit of knowledge and get the photos that you need to get a leg up on your competition. I like to think of photography and even video content as a bit of a layer cake. There's 3 layers. The first layer is content that you create yourself, and obviously this is the most cost-effective way. And you don't really need a massive setup to do any of these things that we're going to talk about today. In fact, most of the stuff can be just with just your mobile phone. Cameras today have come a long way, and you don't necessarily need a 5 or 10,000 pound camera to get good shots. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you some settings and apps and things that you can use to make professional looking photos at home or at your business yourself. For example, if you're a kitchen fitting company and you do something that's incredibly unique, why not take pictures of it? Take a before and after. Take a, this is the kitchen that we took out and this is what we did. Fantastic way to show new customers. The second layer is social media and influencers. Find local social media influencers in your area. They don't have to have 10 million followers globally. What you're looking for, depending on the size of your business, is somebody that's passionate about what you're selling. If it's coffee, if it's IT, if it's dresses, whatever it is, there are local people on social media that dig what you do. Great photography on your website and on social media gives people an idea of who you are and what you're about without them even having to read a word. One of the best ways to utilize essentially free content is to just reshare people's photos. When they tag you, reshare them. Make sure you tag them and say, another happy customer, or something. Come up with something that works in the voice of your company. Some people can be a bit more edgy. Some people need to be very corporate. It's about finding what works best for you. Becoming your own influencer is a fantastic way to lend credibility to your brand. Everyone loves seeing a face, putting a brand and a face together. Everyone loves that, and it adds trust, and it also just gives a bit of legitimacy to, you're not just J.R. Smith tiling. You're James, and you do tiling, and you do a fantastic job at it. And layer 3 is kind of the last thing, is professionals. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be super expensive. There are people of all different abilities, different kinds of gear, different experience, and different creative workflows that you can work with locally. So that said, that's the 3 layers of the cake: producing content yourself with your phone, social media influencers, as well as professional. And it all comes together to give a bigger picture of your brand and what your values and what you're trying to sell to your customers. So with that said, I'm going to show you some settings for your iPhone. The most important thing you can do when you start taking photos with your phone is to make sure that your settings are all set up correctly so that you get the best possible image. I use an iPhone, some people use Android, and there's other ones as well. We're in the chat right now, so if you have any questions about how to set up an Android phone, we can point you to some different resources for that. But for now, we're going to show you how to set it up on an iPhone. One of the first things I recommend is making sure that you're upgraded to the newest version of iOS, at least the highest version that your phone can support. Some phones will have different settings, but most of the settings will be very similar for this. So we're going to hop right into settings here. Settings, and then you are going to scroll down to camera. It's about halfway down. It's near music, TV, photos, and camera. So pop into camera, and then the first setting we're going to change is in preserve settings. You're going to want to make sure that camera mode is off, creative controls is off, and live photo is on. We're going to turn the grid on here. I like to shoot with it all the time. It just keeps your horizon straight. Keep the grid on. I like that on. And Damien's actually going to talk to you later about how to use the grid as well as the rule of thirds to take better photos. While we're in here, we're going to set up some video modes just to help you out. I like to keep mine at 1080p at 60 frames a second. It's the most file efficient. You're not going to use a lot of space on your phone. And then you always know you can come back here and set it to 4K if you really want to. Some phones have even more. Unless you're really going to use it, you don't need to just fill your phone up with 4K footage you're probably never going to use. If you have a special project, click it up to 4K, but 1080p, totally fine for most of what you're doing. Even 720 is totally fine. Don't let anyone scare you about that. I like to record my slow-mo at 1080p at 240 frames per second. It's the fastest this iPhone can go. I may as well have it fast. If I'm going to just shoot slow-mo, may as well be as fast as I can shoot it, at least for this camera. The next thing we're going to do is go into formats, and you'll see here, yours is probably set to high efficiency. That means that it saves to a very file size efficient format, but a lot of times you have to bring it to your computer and change it and convert it to JPEG, and then before you can use it on your website or upload it to places. I don't like that. So I like to set mine to most compatible. It's just a standard JPEG. If you find that you want a different format or you're using too much space, you can always switch it back to high efficiency. But in this case, totally recommend most compatible. And last but not least, at the very bottom, HDR. I don't like having it on. Don't really want the phone to do things for me automatically. So I turn it off. So that's all the settings taken care of. Like I said, you'll have similar settings on your Android or other mobile device. The main settings that you're looking for across all devices, I like to have the grid on. You want to take the most simple photo that you can take without it doing lots of extra stuff on top of it. So when you jump into the camera app, the first thing you're going to notice is it's on photo mode because that's what we set it down in preserve settings. To the left, when you swipe along here, you'll get to more video modes like time lapse, slow motion, and the actual video mode. We're just going to stick on photo here for a second. If you have an iPhone that supports it, you can also get wide, normal, and telephoto. Depends on your options or your phone. I like to keep mine just pretty much on the normal one, but certain aspects, wide is kind of cool and just gives you a different kind of view of something. That's pretty neat. So once your focal length is set up, you can just push the little arrow at the top of the screen to bring up other options that you can do with your photos. Flash is set down here. Right now it's set to off. I always have mine off. And then you can set whether you want live photo on, auto, or off. I like to generally leave mine on, or at least auto. Number 2, we have 4:3. I like 4:3 the best. If you take it in square, you're going to wish you didn't, almost always. Leave it in 4:3. Just don't even worry about it. Then timer, pretty self-explanatory, 3 seconds or 10 seconds down there on the bottom. Just keeps it a little bit more stable whenever you're taking a photo. If it's on a tripod or something, it means that you haven't kind of bumped it to take the photo. Creative modes, I always leave them off. There's never a time when I want to bake in any of this stuff. That's pretty cool though. And while I wouldn't generally choose to take my photos like that, don't worry, we can talk about it when we get to actually using editing settings in the editing app, how to remove all that. So if you do want to shoot with that, and you do want to turn on your creative mode and take some photos with them on there, I can show you later how to take that back to being stock. So that's your creative options. Again, I like to leave mine off for the most part. So something else you can do with your phone, depending on which iPhone model you have or which Android phone or mobile phone you have, there might be like a portrait mode, and it might be something that you can take a picture and you get a little bit more of a creamy background, sort of like an SLR image. Kind of sometimes maybe looks more expensive. You can obviously overdo it, and I'll show you in editing how we can tweak this a little bit. But a lot of times it might not be the right choice for you, but it's always an option for something you might want to try. And the third or fourth option for photos is panorama, where you can start a panorama on one side and slowly pan across, and it'll tell you where to slow down or to speed up. And you generally tilt your phone up or down to try and keep that arrow right on the line. Boom. And you can see that. It's kind of cool. You might have an option for that you can use it for. Well, I really hope that's been helpful learning how to set up your iPhone. But remember, Android and other mobile devices are very similar. It shouldn't be an issue doing very similar settings in your own mobile device. Now, sometimes you might not have all of the things, but the basic gist is that you want to set up your phone to take photos that are not processed by the phone. You want to be as raw as possible.
So now you've set up your phone, let's take a look at a few things that help take your photographs to the next level. The first thing you want to do is make sure your lens is clean. It's useful to get into the habit of quickly giving your lens a clean before taking a photograph. Next up is focus. You want to make sure whatever you're taking a photograph of, that it's in focus. You can do this by tapping on the subject that you want to focus on. If you move closer to your subject and tap on the screen where you want the focus to be, this will throw your background out of focus, which makes your subject really stand out. Now you know how to set your focus point manually. There's also some cases where this won't work. For example, if there's movement in the scene, the camera might be constantly readjusting the focus point to compensate for the subject's new position. To overcome this, you can lock your focus. Just tap on your subject on the camera screen and hold your finger down for a few seconds. You'll see the AE/AF lock appear. The focus lock will remain on your camera until you close the app or turn off your phone. Next up is exposure. When taking your photograph, frame up the subject and tap on the screen to lock exposure. If you've seen the focus square, you've probably paid attention to the yellow sun icon on the right hand side. Simply hold your finger down on your screen until the yellow box appears with a little sun icon. This little icon with the slider will help you adjust your exposure for your image. If you need your image to be darker and underexposed, simply drag your finger down on the screen. If you want it to be brighter and overexposed, then just drag your finger up. It's good to underexpose a little bit, as this gives you more detail to work with afterwards when you're editing the photograph. Now to take a look at lighting for your photos. You want to make sure your subject is lit correctly, and the best way of doing that is by using natural light. Make sure your subject is not backlit. Either move your subject or move the camera. Here's an example of using natural light to take a photograph. So you can see here I have my natural light coming from a window on the right hand side. What you can do is also get a piece of paper or white card to act as a reflector from the opposite side of the window. This will allow you to bounce the natural light from the window to the darker side of the subject, to fill in the shadows and to give you a nice highlight on the left hand side. You can really see the difference this makes to your subject. It just shows you don't need any fancy or expensive equipment. Just a window and a white piece of card. The rule of thirds is something that's been used in art since the 18th century. As Billy discussed earlier on, you should have your grid turned on in your camera settings. Your iPhone's camera grid helps you create a balanced composition that adheres to the rule of thirds by displaying a faint grid over the capture frame, and will really help you improve your framing and especially useful for landscape photography. According to this rule, each picture should be divided into 9 equal parts, 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal. The subjects in this photo should be placed at the intersections of those lines or along them. This can make them much more visually striking. As well as the framing in your camera, you can also frame a subject by creating a frame within a frame. To do this, you can use any subject of your scene you're shooting. It could be the branches on a tree pointing to your subject, the side of the wall using the leading lines to your subject, or even an open door or a window. The framing draws the attention of your viewer to the subject that you want to highlight. There's also a number of other things to think about when you're taking a photograph. Think about what themes you can include in your photographs that help make your subject stand out. What textures can you use to make your photo more interesting? This could be a texture on the wall, on the floor, or even a wooden table. What angles can you shoot your photos from? Are you shooting top down, side on, close up? A great way of taking photographs close up is turning your camera upside down. This is a great way of shooting straight on or shooting up at your subject at an angle. The last thing is experiment and practice. The more photographs you take, the more new things you try, your photographs will become better. We hope these tips have added to your knowledge of phone photography and photography in general. The next step is to edit your photographs.
Well, now that we've set up your phone in settings, as well as learned how to use the camera app to take some really awesome photos, we're going to move straight into editing. Now, editing can be done simply in the Photos app on your iPhone. There'll be something very similar on Android or other mobile devices, but it's basically what comes with your phone to give you a little bit of control over exposure and some other little details. This is the free option. We also have 2 other options, and we'll discuss those shortly. But without further ado, let's jump in right now. So I recommend you go straight into Photos, and there's an image here that we took earlier of the 3D printed Stein. And we're going to just kind of make it pop a little bit more. So what I want you to do is go straight into Edit, and that's going to bring up a couple of options. You have options from auto adjusting, exposure, brilliance, highlights, shadows, contrast, and many, many more in here. And I'm going to go through and explain some of these to you so that you know what you're doing when you're in this app. So first of all, auto, very simple. It's just going to do a little bit of an auto enhance. It's going to look at the exposure and say, needs to be adjusted. Adjust the brilliance, adjust the highlights and shadows, contrast, brightness, black point, saturation, vibrance, warmth. All these things are going to be done automatically for you. It's going to take its best guess at what you want to do with your photo. I don't always recommend it, but I do know that it's a very fast option for some people, so that's definitely on the cards. What I like to do is just start out with a basic flat image. So the first thing I want you to do is to go to Live, which is something that we set up in the Settings tab earlier. When you have it on Live, you actually have the option of scrubbing back and forth to find a very stable image, which is very cool. So like maybe I took the image here, but actually, you know what, I was more stable here, and I like that better. So I'm going to make that my key photo. So we're going to be editing that one, which is a super cool version of Live. We're then going to go to our settings here. So the first thing I notice here is that the exposure, we can make it brighter or darker. Basically what you want to do is make sure that there's no part of your image that is blown out. So you're going to look for something, it's probably right to begin with. This is just a tweak. So I like to go down just a little bit and make sure everything, the whitest whites and the darkest darks are represented. So I like that. It's a -1. Brilliance will add a little bit of pop to your image. So if you go too far, it'll look a little bit fake, and I don't really recommend that. And you don't have to use every single setting. It's kind of just playing with it to see if you can make something that's a little bit unique. I like to add a little bit of brilliance. I wouldn't go too much above 40. You see it starts getting a little bit cartoonish. So I add a little bit of that. Look at the highlights and say, do we want to pop those a little bit? And then we want to crush the shadows down a little bit, which means taking away some of them, darkening them a little bit. Contrast is generally fine. Brightness is generally fine. Now, what black point will do is it will give a bit of a fade to your photo. It's basically raising the black point. So if you take it away, you get a bit of a faded photo. They're kind of in now. And if you lower the black point, you get a real crushed image. I'd recommend a little bit less, but this is all up to personal preference. You have something like saturation that's going to take you, you can go all the way to black and white, or you can go hyper saturated. I tend to not touch that. It just depends on your mood. A little bit of extra is not going to hurt, but I keep it under 10. Anything above 10 starts looking like ghoulish and disgusting. So, be subtle. Every time you set something like saturation and you're like, oh, that's exactly what I want, I always dial it back a little bit. Set it, dial it back. That's the best way to go. Vibrance is cool. It starts looking fake high levels again. I wouldn't really go too much higher than a couple of points on that. You got warmth, and that's going to set your white balance. So if you're shooting in a room that's full of tungsten lights or kind of Edison bulbs, more of a yellow cast, the more you go warm, the warmer it's going to be. So you might want to pull it down a little bit, make the whites look white. But if you go too much down south, it's going to be really blue. It's kind of just finding that perfect balance where your photo looks normal and you're happy with it. I'm shooting under a tungsten light, so I like to pull it back just a little bit and just make it look a little bit whiter. Tint, don't really need to worry about. Sharpness, I like to add a little bit. I have a pretty good camera, but just be careful. If you add too much, it's going to start getting really, really pixelated and grainy. So even just a little bit will help make that image pop a little bit more. I like to add the definition a little bit. Again, all of these things are things that you can play with. It's going to kind of sharpen it as well as kind of pop different parts of the image. And then a little bit of noise reduction, and don't really add vignette unless you're going back to the 80s. There's a white vignette that way and there's a dark vignette that way. It's good in certain situations, but I like to keep that at 0 for the most part. And when you're happy with that, you can just click done, or as we talked about before, there are a couple of presets on here that you can also add. Let's say we go back to our favorite one that we liked, the dramatic cool one. No, we were on vivid cool. Vivid cool. Now you have options of being able to make that less strong. You can go all the way from 0 all the way up. That's pretty cool. I like that. And then finally, when you have that set, you can go all the way over to kind of your crop and your straighten tools. And you can move the image around to how it suits you the best, whether you want to keep it straight or you want to kind of pop it in. It's a great way to kind of crop your image as well. So all you have to do is use 2 fingers and you can make your image as zoomed in as you want. But remember, the closer you get, the more pixelated it's going to be. But you might want to find, I want to crop that in a little bit. So hit done. It's going to save your photo. And there is our photo there. It's pretty cool. So I hope that shows you how easy it is to just go into the app that's already on your phone to edit some of your photos. You can see in the before and the after how different the image looks in just a couple of seconds of editing. And don't forget, you can always go back in and revert to the original version of your photo super simply by just going into Photo, Edit, and then Revert Settings. So now that we've seen how powerful the Photos app is for editing photos directly on your phone, I'd like to show you some other third-party apps that I really like. The first one is called Snapseed, and it's from Google. And you can get it on the iOS store or the Google Play Store. And it's free, so it's fantastic and it's worth trying anyway. So we're going to jump right in and show you how easy it is to edit on that as well. And what you're presented with is a place where you can load your photos in. And these are all the photos that we've just taken. We're going to look at our original image here that has been reverted to exactly like it was when we took it. And you'll be presented with a bunch of different looks. And I think a lot of times they're a little bit over the top. I really like, if you're gonna pick a preset, I really like Faded Glow. It's definitely a hard edit. It's very, very punchy, but I do like it. And if you wanna stop there, you can just hit your checkbox there and then export and save as a copy. That is my favorite because you're not saving over your original image. Now, if you want to get a little bit creative and have even more control of your image, let's just revert that to how it was before we made any changes in looks. And then we're going to go into tools. And while this might look a little bit daunting at first, there's a lot of different settings in here. I totally recommend you just stay on the top level, which is kind of the same types of settings that you would have had in the photo camera app earlier on the iPhone. You can tune your image. Swiping left and right will adjust your brightness right off the get-go, but then you can swipe up and down and get to all the different other settings that we talked about. You might want to improve your ambiance a little bit. You might want to boost the highlights. You might want to cool it down a little bit and bring the whites out a little bit more. I really like that, so we're just going to hit the checkbox. And then we can go back into tools again and keep going. Details, we're going to look and we're going to say a little bit more structure in there. That's going to kind of make it pop more. See how it kind of makes the features a little bit darker? I really like that. So we're going to save that as well. And then last but not least, there's something a little bit different here that you can't do just in the photo app, and that's healing. And if you notice, there's a little tiny little place over here, and you can use 2 fingers to zoom in. There's a little bit of that image poking in over here on the left-hand side. We're just literally going to touch our finger to it, and it's gone. And we're going to then save it. And look, we've quickly taken out something that was a little bit distracting in there and made it a little bit better as an image without having to do too much else or take it into Photoshop or anything like that. But all in all, that's a fantastic image, and you've done it in a completely different program, and again, you can export and save as copy. So now we have a new image completely exported in Snapseed, and I highly recommend you get in there and you just enjoy some of these settings and try some different things, play with the different settings and see what you can get, because there's a lot of different options for making your images pop, and I think that looks pretty awesome. And it's a bit different than what we did just in the photo app. And last but not least, I highly recommend PicTapGo from Totally Rad Software. It's $2.99 on the iOS store, and if you're finding that the camera settings or the Snapseed program a little bit too difficult to start off with, this is a fantastic way to use really powerful presets and actually be able to dial them back and stack them on top of each other in order to create a really unique image. So we're going to jump in the program here. So when you load into PicTapGo, you're going to see all your images there, and we're going to load the image that we've taken before. This is still the reverted image with no effects on it. We're going to just simply go to Edit. You'll have your usual adjustments of brightness, contrast, color, and warmth, but what we're going to focus on is the filters, or as I like to call them, recipes. They're actually lots of different effects that they've built to work together, and you can layer them. So what I like to do is start with my color. I'm gonna, you know what, let's cool it down a little bit. Let's bring out some of those whites. We're gonna find a place on here that's perfect for us. I kind of like it about right there. And then we're gonna go on to the next one. We're gonna leave it there. We're gonna scroll up with our finger, and we're gonna move down the list here. I really like skinny jeans, both in real life and on photo editing apps. This is going to kind of give it a little bit of a fade, and you can dial it into what you like, and you can always just hold your finger on the photo to see the difference. Now it's going to be subtle on some of these, but if you do it really to 100%, you can see how much it's actually changing the photo. I think that's too much, just blowing it out, but adding little bits and then going down and finding ones that you like Peer pressure is also good. And you don't have to use all of these, but each one is doing something a little bit interesting to the photo. There you go, you can see the difference there. That's pretty neat. So I like to add a couple of these together until I've got an image that I'm happy with. Orangey gold is kind of cool. You can see that it kind of takes out some of the craziness. I'm pretty happy with that. So when you're happy, when you've gotten everything like you want it to be, and remember, you can go black and white, you can go whatever you want to do. Oh, I don't like that one. Simple, just undo. Takes you back one step. Back to our image that we really liked. So we're gonna hit go, and then you have a bunch of different options down here. You can actually save that recipe. It's multiple different filters put together, if that's something that you wanna save as a look. Or you can save it to Instagram, straight to Instagram, or to your camera roll. So what we're gonna do is just save it straight to our camera roll, and that's it. We have edited an image in that in maybe 15 or 20 seconds. So that's the quickest way to get an edited image, in my opinion, to make it pop without having to do too much in the settings. You're literally just picking your favorite looks, and anytime you do too much, you just dial it back a little bit. So those are our 3 favorite apps. One that comes with the phone, one that's free, and one that's $2.99. That's a great starting point for your iPhone photography or your mobile phone photography journey. And these can be applied to any type of photos, whether they're product shots, whether you're taking landscape photos, or whether you're taking pictures of people in action. There's all kinds of options that you can do in software, and this is just a start point.
Next up is gear. These are a few things that we think will take your photographs to the next level. The first piece of kit, the Joby Handy Pod. This is a mini tripod, which also folds into a nice handle for holding your phone. It is a push button lock system that will lock your camera at whatever angle you want, including portrait mode. This is great for taking photographs of products, and it's really portable as it folds up and fits in your pocket. What I also love about this product is that it's great for holding your phone when you're making those Zoom calls. Another piece of gear we think is really important is an LED light. Whether you're shooting after dark or in a room with no natural light, an LED light is a must-have. A light shone from an angle is much more flattering than any smartphone's flash, which shoots at the same angle as the lens is facing. We like to use lighter lights, and we always have them in shoots. This lighter torch is about £85 and has 3 different light modes. They're so small and compact. It's 1.5 inches in size, and what we really like is that it's also magnetic. It has 3 brightness levels and it even has a strobe function. And they're really bright. Another great light is the Lighter Pro Bicolor, which I'm actually using right now. It's a much bigger light and much more expensive, but has a lot more features. At £250, the light is a little bit bigger than the lighter torch, but is still super small and fits in your pockets easily. The light can be adjusted in 5% increments, and it's flicker free. The best thing is that it's bicolor, which means it can change the color temperature from 3000 Kelvin to 6000 Kelvin in 100K increments, which can also be done through an app. It also has a little display so you can see your settings.
Earlier we talked about how certain iPhones have a wide angle lens. Now if your mobile phone doesn't have that, it's not a problem at all, because you can get a clip that's a wide angle lens that will fit right over your camera and give you that wide angle look. And you can get it on Amazon. There's all different qualities, there's different kinds, but there's a $3.99, 12, there's 20, there's 100. It just depends on the level that you want to go to. A lot of times it's a little bit less expensive than buying a full SLR or a professional camera, and it gives you a little bit of more shooting options. So there's one for $12.99. It actually comes with a fisheye, a macro lens, so you get real close up with it. I haven't used that one, but that's a fantastic option for giving you a little bit more creative freedom. And if you really want to go big, we recommend Moment. Moment lenses, they're absolutely fantastic. They have cases where the lens actually fits onto the phone, so it's there with you all the time, so you have your phone protected, and then you could buy different lenses. Now this is a very expensive option, but it is really good glass. It's going to really improve what you're trying to do with your mobile phone photography. Highly recommended. Definitely expensive, but the look that you're going to get and the options you're going to have for photography and video sometimes makes it worth your while. There's all different kinds of lenses, and there's also all different kinds of cases and all kinds of filters to help you to take really fantastic photography. So last but not least, Damien and I would like to leave you with some of our top tips on getting the very best quality photos out of your mobile phone. Make sure your camera settings are correct. Now, we went over this before in this video, and you can always refer back to it at a later date. Before you take a photo, always clean your lens. It may seem kind of silly, but a lot of times I've had a really good shot ruined just by having a thumbprint on the lens. Really think about your photo. Where would it look good from, and what angles could you use? My photography teacher always said, don't take the same tourist shot that everybody else does. If you're at the Eiffel Tower, don't just take that exact same image that everyone else takes. Why not go down a side street and capture it from a different angle, or maybe a different height? That's the way that you make something that's truly memorable and unique to you. Shoot through something. Have something in your foreground that's maybe blurred out and gives a little bit more interest to your photo. Think outside the box. What could you do differently? A photographer that I really respect is Peter McKinnon, and he used to work for a playing card company. And when he was taking pictures of different kinds of playing cards, they'd have different themes. And so he decided straight away, you can't just take an interesting photo of playing cards without having a little bit of a story around it. So if it was a water-based theme, he would have, maybe a rope or some water splashing on it, or some kind of nautical theme, something to just build the story behind the image. So there's more than just your product. It doesn't always just have to be on a white background. Lighting is obviously super important. Find the light. Use natural light if possible. It always looks the best. The color temperature just looks like what we're used to seeing. If you need to use artificial lights, why not try some colors? There's all different kinds of colored gels that you can get, as well as different color LEDs that can actually boost your photo and make them a little bit more interesting. Use framing to your advantage. You could center weight certain objects, or even put them different places in the frame. It's all about trying to find something that's unique to your brand. Why not use tilt? Not everything has to be perfectly straight. In filmmaking, we use a term called Dutch tilt, and it's almost a 45-degree tilt, and it was made popular by the Dutch. It's overused sometimes, but in the right situation, it can look fantastic. So I highly recommend you try it. Editing. Please don't over-edit your photos. We've given you some knowledge on how to use several different programs now, but that doesn't mean you need to go into every single setting and turn it up to 100%. Nothing looks worse than an image that is oversaturated and over-contrasted. I would much rather see a well-framed, in-focused object with some creativity behind it and minimally processed straight out of the camera than an over-edited photo. And last but not least, don't be afraid to be creative. Get out there and get passionate about your business. Get passionate about the products that you're selling to your customers, and that will come through in the images that you take.
So we hope these tips and techniques we've shared with you in this webinar will help you become a better phone photographer. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us. Or you can ask us a question in the chat below, and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, and a very special thank you to Tourism Northern Ireland for having Speed Motion a part of the TED program of online webinars. Damon and I absolutely love being creative. We love getting out and taking photos and shooting video, and we hope that this has rubbed off on you a little bit and you've got a great base to build from to take even better photos with your mobile phone.